When day-to-day situations feel negative, they feel draining, you might want to try this approach. Put on your negativity armor and let the bad vibes bounce off. It's a strategy psychologist Amy Wieland from Positive IQ says can help us all through negative situations and put a little more positivity back into our day-to-day. Great to have you, Amy. I'm intrigued with this idea, and I mentioned at the beginning of this show because a lot of times we know we should think positive, right?
Right.
And so we hit the positive thoughts hard, but you're kind of taking it from the underbelly and saying, get rid of the negative, and that will allow the positive to come in.
Absolutely. Well, we know that we interact with negativity every day. And so to assume that everything needs to be happy and bubbly and fine and bounce right off us all of the time is unrealistic. So the idea is put some things into place, have some strategies so that when you do interact with that negativity that we experience every day, you get through it okay, that it doesn't affect you for a long time.
You describe this as a negativity armor, which is brilliant on your part because it does paint the picture of a shield, like a protection of sorts. Is that what we're going for?
Definitely, but at the same time, we don't want to keep other people out. So think of it as a buffer or something that can protect you or some go-to when you do experience any sort of negativity. Let's say even I'm driving down the street and someone honks at me and gets upset. That's a small form of negativity. So what do I do to bounce back from that? Do I ruminate and think, oh, they're such a jerk, I don't like Utah drivers? We don't want to think that, right? For long. But the idea is interact with that negativity, recognize that maybe you were frustrated for a second, but then walk through the steps that we'll talk about today to get through that negativity and end up in a positive state of mind again.
So this strategy, these steps can apply to a myriad of situations.
Definitely.
And I'm glad you mentioned the relationships because there is a concern about just blocking it all out, and we don't want that. So the balance between the protection and the relationships. You say the key there, though, is to recognize with the people you're inviting in and out that their emotions are contagious.
Absolutely. Have you ever been part of an organization, or let's say you're at a concert and the emotions are high end? People are cheering, people are really excited. We latch on to that. We get excited, we get motivated. Think of something on the contrary, where we are interacting with someone and they say something negative about one of our neighbors. Suddenly that shifts our focus, and we might even look for confirmation in what they're saying to be true.
Absolutely.
So if they say something negative about one of our neighbors, suddenly our perspective shifts and our emotions change. We take on their negativity. So we need to recognize that emotions are contagious. And if I'm having a bad day when I wake up, yes, I can choose to have a positive day, but let's be real, sometimes we wake up in that mood. We have to recognize that we need to, as much as we can, control the environments we subject ourselves to.
I've been in those conversations you describe where you walk away thinking, now hold on, I really didn't feel that way, but in pursuit of connection with the person that I'm talking to, you find yourself kind of tripping down their path and validating what they're saying, even if you didn't intentionally feel that yourself.
It's true. And so as part of that too, we need to recognize in that moment that we are being affected by that negativity, which is the second piece of the armor. How does negativity affect you? Negativity is different on every person. What might affect you adversely for a couple of hours might take me all day. So we have to be able to notice the signs and the symptoms. So emotions are contagious, just like the flu is contagious. We see that through research, that we can contract it. So we know symptoms of the flu. We know when we're getting a fever, when we're getting achy, that we're coming down with the flu. Do we know our own personal indicators of contracting negativity?
Well, so there are some obvious ones that I think we could apply to the blanket human race, right? Kind of the tense feeling in your stomach, maybe the heightened heart rate.
Yes.
What are some more subtle signs that we might want to pay attention to individually?
Let's say, well, if it's affecting how I interact with someone after the conversation, I know I've been affected. So after having the conversation with my neighbor, I immediately go inside my home and I'm really snippy with my kids. Or if I'm at work and I have a negative interaction with a coworker and then I go back to my desk and I pick up the phone and I'm angry because of that interaction, that's how it's affecting me. So notice those little tiny signs.
We bring it up a lot in relational conversations like this, but I have to bring it up once again, social media. I find myself thinking like, how do I feel when I see those person's pictures or their posts? And I have to admit, I've distance myself on a social media platform from people that do kind of bring out what I would describe as not the best in me.
It's so true. And we're subjected to that. every day. If we want to be part of a conversation in social media, we have to be willing to see that not all conversations are going to be positive.
Any strategies, Amy, on how to control our response? Once we've identified, you know, that emotions can latch on to us and there are some symptoms we're experiencing, how then can we move forward in a positive way with our response?
So first we need to make sure that we understand that response is different than reaction. When we're on social media and someone says something to us or they include us in a comment, we want to be really upset and we respond or we react really quickly. We want to defend ourselves. It's very primitive to go that way. A response is something that involves a higher level of brain function where we can see cause and effect. So a response takes a little bit longer. That means we need to step back, sometimes push away from our desk and the keyboard and not say anything.
You're
right
validating
away.
My dad's advice. He's given me great business advice over the years, and one was never send an email angry. That applies to text messages, that applies to phone calls. Never communicate when you're feeling upset.
Yeah, or draft it.
There you go.
And then walk away for 5 minutes.
Just make sure you don't hit send, right?
It's true.
Inadvertently.
It's true. But draft it, come back in a little bit, and sometimes do it overnight. Draft that email, come back in the morning and reread it with new eyes. If it's a reaction, maybe have someone else read it and say, does this sound reactionary or am I responding in an effective way?
Have someone check you, but don't react, respond. Be thoughtful, be purposeful, take some time with it.
Absolutely.
Why can a little understanding go a long way? This is a big passion point for you, that having understanding can really stretch you further.
So we don't ever know someone else's entire story. We don't. And what we find in some of the research about negativity and why people tend to complain, that's a form of negativity, is fear. They're scared of something. So let's say someone's complaining about the school system to which their child attends, and they say, you know, I really don't like the new principal, or I don't like what's happening. Chances are they're afraid that something's going to happen that will hurt their child. So that's fear, and it's coming across as complaining and venting. So what we need to do is step back, not immediately assess judgment, and say, why are you always complaining? But instead say, show me what you see that maybe I don't see. And this is important in social media conversations as well, because I think we tend to approach them as a conflict. I don't agree with you.
It's a yes or no.
I don't like this, or we see in absolutes, it's right or it's wrong. In thinking of something like this in terms of how do I understand them more goes from conflict to compromise and conversation.
You know who's good at this? I had a conversation with my 20-year-old sister about this very topic just the other day, the millennials. I think millennials are very good. You know, they get a lot of slack, they get a bad rap sometimes, but as far as the open-mindedness and the understanding you're talking about, we maybe could take a lesson from those a decade, you know, before us, after us.
I agree, because I think there is that little bit of open-mindedness that I don't know everything, so help me learn from this conversation. It's not a conflict. It's a conversation.
We talked about emotions being contagious, so it only makes sense that your last piece of advice is to seek out people who are positive.
Yeah, and this is part of almost repairing our negativity armor. If we're subjected to things we have no control over, maybe at the workplace or with neighbors or family members, then we want to rebuild those reserves of positivity. So we do that by being around people that life is good and they're showing us hopeful and optimistic approaches more than everything's awful and we can't control any of it.
And again, it's not that perfect bubble, but there is something to promoting positivity. I see this in motherhood circles a lot. You know, it's easy to connect mom to mom with the whining and talks about the laundry load, right? And the teething toddler. But at the end of the day, it's positivity that lifts us all up together.
I agree, and it's very contagious. So what the point is, you want to walk away from those conversations feeling replenished, feeling like you can put your armor back on again, not the armor that it keeps other people out, but it keeps you safe.
Super insightful, Amy. Thank you so much. Where can people get more insight from you on the power of positivity?
So, Positive IQ, we do have an assessment people can take to determine what their positive IQ is, and we also offer corporate programs and workshops in the workplace.
Are people surprised when they take that assessment where they're really at from a positive IQ standpoint?
I'm sure some people are.
Yeah?
Yes.
I'll be taking that. I'm curious to know. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Look for the link to that assessment, and you mentioned on our website, studio5.ksl.com.